Hey everyone. So this video was supposed to come out like a while ago, but things happened, so just consider this video a nice send-off to Three Hopes as we move on to Engage. With that out of the way, on to the video. What's up everyone? It's your boy Walt. Been playing a lot of Three Hopes lately. Now, when you beat the game the first time, you unlock Maddening mode. A mode that works well with New Game Plus, as you will have something to do since the enemies' levels are increased to be much higher, which allows them to still provide a little bit of a challenge for your overleveled characters. Pretty standard stuff, especially for a Warriors game. But what happens when you decide to play on Maddening without New Game Plus? Well, actually, the game starts out pretty normally for the first few chapters. But then the time skip comes and... In all seriousness though, this mode is not nearly as impossible as it seems. In fact, I have had way more fun playing the game this way than playing it normally. I found the base game pretty, brain dead, so this difficulty spike was quite welcome. In saying that though, yes, the mode is indeed very challenging. It's going to require a significant amount of more skill and understanding of the game's mechanics than even regular Maddening mode. But hey, for all of you who are looking for a challenge, here are some tips that will help you survive. I'm going to split this video into 3 parts. Camp preparations, preparations made right before the battle, and the actual battles. Keep in mind this playthrough is under the assumption you aren't grinding. It's a bit more difficult to do since there's an annoying mechanic where they save the XP you earned when you lose, but this can be circumvented by soft resetting the console when you lose. So without further ado, let's begin. Preparing before each battle is quite important. The enemies are going to be way stronger than your other units, so any edge you can get will be helpful. Now, the first thing to mention is gold is a very limited resource, even with grinding. There are already a ton of videos explaining why, which I linked in the description, but the point is it's important to single out what you should spend the gold on and what you should ignore. Your main focus should be on upgrading the facilities, as there are quite a lot of facility effects that can definitely help out. This will also give you access to more activity and training points faster. There are a couple you should ignore, some you should prioritize, and some that are just okay. I'll break this down by going over each facility. For each facility, I'll explain what effects to prioritize and which ones to ignore, what to spend your gold and resources on in each facility, and rank each facility by least important to most important. First up, in dead last place, is the Battalion Guild. All of these facility effects are okay, but there aren't any you should prioritize. Upgrade them if you have the resources, but they aren't high priority. Battalions really aren't that useful on this type of playthrough, as you are going to die in 2 to 3 hits regardless of the resistances they grant. And even if the resistances do help a little, the battalion endurance depletes after only a couple of hits anyway, making it useless. Even if you do want to use battalions, you get way better battalions just by playing the game normally than you do from the guild. Occasionally, if you want a specific resistance for a specific character, it's okay to utilize, but otherwise you can just ignore this facility for the most part. Now, 6th place, the Marketplace. Upgrading the armory is a waste of gold and resources. All of the weapons you get from drops in battles are going to be better than the weapons sold there no matter what point in the game you are at, and especially on Maddening difficulty where drops tend to be better than average. However, the effect that allows you to get more gold per battle is one you should prioritize, but you need to upgrade the armory once to obtain it. So I would recommend only upgrading it once and then prioritizing maxing out the more gold per battle effect. The ingredients effects can also be ignored. You get plenty of good ingredients just by playing the game normally. I had more than enough ingredients to get the best possible cooking effects I could possibly get for pretty much every chapter just by playing the game normally. The gift effect is relatively decent to upgrade up to level B, which will give you access to the stockpile effects. The stockpile effects, combined with the effects that reduce the cost of gifts, will ensure you will be able to buy more than enough gifts to make sure your character's motivation is always maxed out. Keeping the motivation levels maxed out is important, as it allows your characters to deal more damage. It's decent, but I will say once you gain enough activity points, it becomes a bit obsolete. In 5th place is the Recreation Quarter. While it only has one effect to prioritize, the importance of that effect is quite high. It is extremely high priority. You upgrade the number of dishes you can cook effect ASAP. Upgrading this effect gives you access to better meals, and the better the meal you eat, the faster your warrior and awakening gauge fills, and the more weapon durability you will have. I cannot understate how much the cooking effects help, as being able to fill your warrior and awakening gauge more quickly, which is the primary way you'll be able to do more damage, and reducing weapon durability costs, allowing you to use more really good combat arts, and more importantly for early game, allowing your healers more heals is extremely useful. Probably one of the most important facility effects to upgrade. Every other effect in this facility I'd ignore. Cooking a better meal, as far as I can tell, just raises support points a bit more. You'll raise supports super quickly anyway by just normally playing the game. Expeditions are really just for support grinding. Yes, you can technically raise units' motivation, but it's more efficient to raise 2 units' motivation at once with cooking and chores. Speaking of chores, don't bother upgrading those effects either, as I rarely use the Chore Master. Cooking does the same thing as chores, but more. The only time I use it is if I have all the cooking effects I want for the chapter, and I have a couple left over, in which case it's helpful in raising some units' motivation that you already raised a bit in cooking. To explain what I mean by that, once 2 characters are selected for cooking, you cannot select those 2 characters again, meaning per character you can only raise them up 1 motivation level. However, chores let you get around this, as you can cook for a character and then do chores with that same character, raising their motivation 2 levels. Now for the 4th most important facility, the blacksmith. Pretty much every facility effect here is useful. If I had to prioritize though, it'd be getting the reforging one to level A as soon as you can. Reforging allows you to keep raising the might and durability up to plus 100. Meaning, if you ever need to do a little extra damage than the maximum plus 10 base that forging allows normally, reforging is your best friend. Upgrading the reforging effect also eventually leads to the effect that unlocks the abilities of legendary weapons, making it even more important. While not as important, the effects that increase might and durability gained by forging are also very useful. What it does is for every value you raise in the might and durability, you will gain a higher amount of might and durability. So for example, with the iron sword, raising the might or durability value adds 3 points to might without upgrades, whereas with upgrades, raising it 1 value increases the might by 6 points. Same with durability. The only facility effect here that should be ignored is the repair weapons effect. I find that repairing weapons in 3 hopes isn't that useful in general. Most of the broken weapons are just brave weapons. Occasionally, you may get a really good legendary weapon that might be slightly better than the weapons you are going to get just from playing the game normally, which you can only get through repairs. However, they are only very slightly better. They aren't worth the golden resources. And then of course, the effect that reduces the cost of using the blacksmith is also high priority. Now, what should you forge? Effective weapons and magic weapons are an easy choice, as well situational. They can be quite handy on the right maps. Other than that, I wouldn't spread yourself too thin. Focus on around 1 to 2 weapons per character. Although, if you are struggling with a certain map, especially early game, don't be afraid to forge a weapon that isn't all that good to get that little bit of extra damage. The most difficult parts of a run like this I find are the early and mid game, so don't worry. By late game, you'll have more than enough materials to forge your weapons of choice like crazy. Speaking of early game, boosting healers' weapon durability can give them an extra heal, which is invaluable. In 3rd place, we have the training grounds. The effects you should prioritize are all the ones that increase the amount of class experience for all of the classes. You can also maximize class experience gained by making it so the partner unit's matching weapon rank is higher than the unit you are trying to maximize class XP gains on. There are also skills that increase class experience, such as Mastermind, as well as items that do so, such as the Knowledge Gem, which is what I'd highly recommend getting over the Experience Gem when given the choice. But why is class experience important, you may ask? Well, class masteries are the biggest edge you are going to be able to get over the overleveled enemies. Gaining useful skills and combat arts can help tremendously in battle, and can give you just what you need to survive. First off, I recommend mastering the 4 beginner classes with each character you are using, as they can be mastered extremely quickly and give pretty decent starter skills. Besides that, there isn't really any quote-unquote correct way to build your characters. However, there are a ton of videos on which skills and combat arts are the best for each character, which I linked in the description, but here are some ones I've personally found really helpful. For skills, Arms Thrift is really good for conserving durability, especially for healers. Skills like Appraisal and Despoil, which give you more gold and resources for defeating enemies, are incredibly useful. Skills that boost your critical, such as the Apex skills and skills like Boost Critical, helps you perform critical rushes faster, and just in general helps you do more damage. Speaking of dealing more damage, skills such as any of the Breaker skills, Offensive Tactics, and Perspective are also quite useful. Some defensive skills such as Renewal and Miracle are extremely useful, especially early on, as being able to heal faster and also potentially being able to take an extra hit can be a lifesaver. But others such as Aegis and Provise are pretty mediocre. Skills that boost the Warrior gauge and Awakening gauge faster are also extremely useful, such as Spirited Seas and Battle Instincts. And finally, skills that boost weapon experience such as Mastermind are also incredibly good, as that helps you get good skills faster. As for skills that aren't all that useful, anything that has to do with guarding like Vantage, or any skill that deals with not getting knocked back such as Backbone, I have found to be not that useful, since I find dodging enemies' attacks is a much better defensive strategy than guarding. Skills that have to do with battalions besides Offensive Tactics are also pretty useless. Skills like Battalion Desperation or Season Tactics, especially early and mid-game, as 1 to 2 hits is enough to wipe out your battalion completely anyway. Skills that boost stats, like Speed +2, are okay, I guess. The enemies are already going to outclass you by a lot in stats no matter what, so those only help so much. Now for some standout combat arts. Heal and Psychic are the best, period, especially early game. Having more heals helps tremendously early on. Silence is also one that I find to be quite underrated. Completely nullifying enemy magic units can be extremely helpful. Frozen Lance and Thimble Vector are absolutely incredible on any of your units with high magic, as not only can it do massive damage, but it also freezes the enemy. Any elemental combat art or magic that can be powered up through essence skills, such as Wind God on Claude or Thimble Vector on Marianne, are also extremely useful. Combat arts and magic that do effective damage like Night Kneeler, Helm Splitter, and Dark Spikes, while situational, are incredibly useful. The best combat arts in the game, though, are ones that bring all the enemies together in one place, such as Wind Sweep, Fire Sweep, and Flame Whirl Kick. You can be completely surrounded, and this combat art not only lets you catch your breath by bringing all the enemies to one place, but I also find it allows you to get critical rushes much faster. And since all the enemies are in the same place, the critical rush will do massive damage to all of them. Plus, it'll also help you chain more critical rushes together as an added bonus. The only combat arts that I found to be kind of bad are the ones that boost your attack or whatever stat for a bit, or helps you fill your warrior and awakening gauges faster temporarily, such as Battle Trance and Steady Mind. For one, you basically stand still for a second or two, which wastes time, and then the extra damage / whatever benefits you get are temporary and not that significant. In tandem with everything stated before, the fastest way to master classes is by using said classes in question in actual battles. But if there's a situation where you have to master a class a unit isn't very good in, so that you can get a really good skill, in order to not expose that unit's weakness, you could just pair them as an adjutant for that chapter. At the end of the day though, don't be afraid to just use classes that units are good in, even if there's no class experience to gain on maps you are struggling with. Now, for the other facility effects in the training grounds. The certification exam effects are important to upgrade, as they give you access to the advanced and master classes, and all the skills and combat arts that come with those classes. As for the training slot facility effects, you only need to upgrade it once. You can only use 8 characters max in each major battle, so there's no point in having more training slots. As for upgrading the effect for lowering the cost of leveling, I say go for it, but it's pretty low priority. Keep in mind, leveling up costs a lot of gold, especially later on in the game. While yes, improving a unit's skill and speed helps in terms of getting critical rushes and awakenings faster, and lets you use combat arts faster, and luck helps a little in getting more pots, improving a unit's strength, magic, defense, resistance, and charm doesn't do very much for you on a run like this, especially early on. No matter what, you aren't going to do much damage, and the enemies will kill you in 1 to 2 hits. An extra point in strength or defense isn't going to change that. I say sure, if you have leftover gold, go ahead and level up your characters, but use it sparingly, and make sure you upgrade this lowering cost effect whenever you can before you begin to do so. Now for the second most important facility, the Tactics Academy. Tactics are an absolute must. What makes this facility so good is this effect right here that gives you more heals. You have no idea how relieving it is to be able to get more heals per battle. For that reason alone, this facility is high priority. But the other effects it has, like extra warrior gauges, better crest effects, and leveling up a character's abilities, are also quite good as well. The only effect I recommend not getting is the final advanced medicinal art facility effect, which unlocks elixirs, as concoctions pretty much already fully heal your unit. As an added bonus, there is no effect that lowers the amount of gold it costs to use the facility. That means that what you see is what you get, so if you have the gold, there's no reason to wait to teach characters tactics. I'd even go as far as to say this facility is important enough to trade in resources meant for other facilities to get the smithing stones needed specifically to buy combat manuals so you can upgrade this facility ASAP. Speaking of trading things in, it's time for the most important facility. This might sound surprising, but I'd argue Supply Master is most important. Reason being is the facility lets you upgrade all of the other facilities much faster. One of the biggest things I would make sure to do at the camp, pretty much after every battle, is trade away all my weapons and resources that I don't need for smithing stones. I find selling leftover stuff really doesn't give all that much gold, so trading them for smithing stones is much more useful. Then, I spend those stones on materials that can be used to upgrade the other facilities. And if I don't have enough leftovers to trade in to get enough smithing stones to get the materials needed for the effect I want, I will go as far as buying iron swords to trade in for more smithing stones. By doing this, you will not only gain access to all of the great facility effects I mentioned before much faster, but this will also upgrade your camp much faster, giving you more activity points and training points earlier on. Therefore, the effects that give you more smithing stones from trading resources and weapons, and the effects that reduce the amount of smithing stones needed to obtain materials are the two most important effects to upgrade at the camp, period. The effect that lets you collect more supplies after each battle is also quite good, as the more materials you get, the more you'll have to trade for smithing stones. While the types of tradable items effects aren't as good, upgrading it to A gives you access to rare materials, and it also lets you keep up in getting more advanced resources for the facility effects that require them as you progress in the game. That covers all the camp preparations. Now, on to the last step of preparations. The preparations that you do right before you start the battle. So Three Hopes reintroduces the weapon triangle from Fates, except gauntlets replace hidden weapons. So swords beat axes, axes beat lances, and lances beat swords as usual. But also tomes beat bows, bows beat gauntlets, and gauntlets beat tomes. Keep this in mind when choosing units. Make sure to look at the enemy map to see what types of enemies are on it, and then choose your units accordingly. Then just make sure the skills, weapon, item, combat arts, and battalions set are the one you want, and you are ready to roll. So early game missions are probably the hardest part of a run like this. The enemies shave your health bar insanely quickly.
Let's earn our keep. Let's go, everyone. I'm sure we'll win. Did my life even have meaning?
Victory will be ours. Together.
Plus, you do so little damage that even if you know what you are doing, it is pretty normal for even the side battles to take up to 30 minutes or longer. My biggest tip is focus on the objective. There are going to be a lot of side objectives / other things going on that are tempting to try and accomplish. While I'm not saying these are impossible, sometimes they just aren't worth your time and resources. So in order to survive, you have to accept you just can't do everything, and you have to pay attention to exactly what you have to do and win, and focus all your energy on doing that. That will help you not be overwhelmed. Now, in regards to ordering your units around, for the most part, ordering units to attack other enemies by themselves, even when paired with an adjutant, is pointless, as they will die in 2 seconds. Here are 2 methods that I have found success with when it comes to ordering units. Method 1 is doing all-out attacks. At a certain point, it doesn't matter that an enemy's level is 100 levels higher than you if they can't move much. This is especially effective on the big maps of each chapter, as with 8 people attacking one enemy, there's not much the enemy can do. If you happen to be playing Golden Wildfire, or you recruited Marianne, she's someone who is golden when using this strategy, as her unique ability makes it so after she regular attacks for a few seconds, ice particles come down to freeze the enemy, making it even more difficult for the enemy to do anything. Be warned though, if you plan to use this strategy, you will have to constantly monitor your unit's health. While you'll be doing a lot of damage and making a decent dent in the enemy's health bar, sometimes the enemies can sneak in a hit or two, and thus your own units will be losing their health rapidly, and you'll probably use up your limited heals rather quickly. So if you prefer a more slower but conservative strategy, here's method number 2. Place 2 of your units in an allied stronghold, and assign the 3rd unit as an adjutant for the unit you are controlling. This will ensure the AI isn't going to wander off and get themselves killed, so you only have to worry about the character you are controlling. This conservative strategy can even be used on maps where you don't have allied strongholds, or where all the allied strongholds are too dangerous. In those cases, with the 2 units you have that you aren't in control of, pair them up and then order them to go to the opposite side of the map. Then, once they arrive, order them to go back to whence they came from, and then just keep ordering them back and forth. This will ensure they do not engage any enemy units and get themselves killed immediately. Keep in mind, you only have 2 heals from vulneraries at the beginning of the game, disregarding healers. So use your heals wisely. Speaking of healers, I would recommend to always bring at least 2 to every single early game map. You never know when you may need an extra heal if you run out of vulneraries. But even assuming you play perfectly, there are going to be NPCs that you can keep alive for a bit longer by healing them, which will be necessary since it takes a lot longer to kill enemies on this kind of run. Not only will healing NPCs help you fulfill side objectives more easily, but on some maps there are key NPCs or allied stronghold captains you need to keep alive, otherwise you lose. So having healers to ensure they stay alive is key. Keep in mind you can heal multiple units at once if necessary, just make sure the NPC and player units are all grouped together and in range of the spell. If you happen to run out of heals and your healers are out of durability, make sure to utilize the allied strongholds. It takes a while, but they do heal your units over time. Since you are spending so long in the maps anyway, it's a good idea to utilize them when you need them. This is also where skills like Renewal come in handy, so try to get access to that skill for any unit that can access it ASAP. Now, let's go over some offensive strategies. Pretty much the only way you're even making a small dent in the enemy's health bar, especially early on, are through critical rushes and warrior specials. You can get critical rushes faster by fighting against enemies you have advantages against, utilizing adjutant follow-up attacks, and there are also plenty of skills that help you get them faster. You can also chain them together with multiple enemies around, so take advantage of that. Awakenings also help tremendously because they will allow you to get critical rushes faster, will naturally fill up your warrior gauge, you are completely invincible, and you get a free warrior special when it ends. And every time you do a critical rush, it'll multiply your EXP, class EXP, and a whole bunch of other stuff when awakened, as well as allow you to stay awakened longer. I find awakenings are best saved for moments when there's just an absurd amount of enemies in one place. Keeps you safe, and it helps you mitigate the dire situation. Make sure before you activate an awakening, your adjutant is paired, as you cannot pair an adjutant while already in an awakened state. That way, you get that bonus damage for the free warrior special at the end. In terms of defense against enemies, as mentioned before, adjutant guard is helpful, so being paired is a good defensive option. I'd also recommend dodge rolling instead of guarding, as perfect dodges give you more invincibility frames. But that doesn't mean don't ever use guarding, as there are circumstances where guarding is useful, especially for armored classes. If you ever find yourself surrounded, as long as you aren't some kind of time limit, don't ever feel like you need to fight all those enemies at once. You can always just do something else related to the objective, and the enemies will usually disperse somewhat. Or, if they don't disperse, you can always go back there later after building up your warrior and awakening gauge. Even if you have a bunch of enemies chasing you across the map, you can just use hit and run tactics. And in fact, if they target your ally unit, the ordering back and forth strategy works even better, as it distracts those enemies whilst also keeping everyone safe. Luring enemies to allied strongholds makes it easier to take them out as well, as they slowly heal your units, and the stronghold captain can help you. If you are able to lure the enemy to an allied stronghold that also has NPC units that can help as well, or basically any area that has a high concentration of green units, even better. One last tip, and it's the most important tip out of all of them. Use the pots. The pots are the most useful thing to keep in mind on every map. At the start of each map, take a look and examine where all the color-coded pots are, and keep in mind their location. Red pots gives you more gold, green pots refills your health, purple pots refills your weapon durability, yellow pots refills your warrior special gauge, and blue pots refills your awakening gauge. Planning out your route based on the pots' locations on the map so that you can get warrior specials and awakenings as much as possible is ideal for survival. It's also important when planning your route to keep in mind where all the red parts are so you can break them in an efficient manner, which will help significantly in having more gold in the long run. If you take any one tip away from this video, it's to use the pots. Not only do they tremendously help with survival, but they can help you get S ranks later on once your units are capable of doing so. The purple pots can also give your healers more heals, which is incredibly helpful early on. And that's all my tips. Keep in mind this really mostly applies to before the second time skip / halfway point in the game. Once you get class mastery, skills, upgrade things in a tactics academy, better weapons, better meals, etc., the mode becomes a lot easier and slowly becomes just a regular Maddening playthrough. So yeah, if these tips help you, or if you feel there are any tips that I missed, feel free to let me know in the comments. Hope you enjoyed the vid. Peace.